The alarm pierced through the Nevada desert air at 0347 hours. Within seconds, 32 F-16 Fighting Falcons would be scrambling from Nellis Air Force Base on what everyone believed was a routine training mission. But Maya Rodriguez crouched behind a fuel truck with grease-stained coveralls and calloused hands, knew something the pilots didn't. In less than 6 hours, she would be climbing into the cockpit of a multi-million-dollar fighter jet she wasn't authorized to touch, let alone fly. And if she failed, every single one of those pilots would die. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Maya had been invisible for 3 years, while fighter pilots strutted across the tarmac in their flight suits, collecting salutes and admiration. She rolled fuel trucks through the pre-dawn darkness. Her job was simple: pump jet fuel, check fluid levels, and stay out of the way. At 26, she was older than most of the hotshot pilots, but in the military hierarchy, she might as well have been furniture. That Tuesday morning started like every other. Maya's alarm buzzed at 0230, and she stumbled through her tiny apartment on the outskirts of Las Vegas, grabbing her thermos of coffee and the same stale bagel she'd been eating for breakfast since her divorce finalized 6 months ago. The drive to Nellis took 37 minutes through empty streets, past neon signs that never slept and billboards advertising shows she'd never afford to see. The base was already humming with activity when she arrived. Maya clocked in at the fuel depot, a windowless concrete building that smelled like petroleum and industrial cleaning supplies. Her supervisor, Technical Sergeant Brandon Walsh, barely looked up from his clipboard as she grabbed her assignment sheet. 32 aircraft needed fuel before the 0600 brief. It would be a long morning. Maya had grown up around aircraft. Her father, Roberto Rodriguez, had been a mechanic at a small airport in Tucson before a heart attack claimed him when she was 19. He'd taught her to read engine specifications like other kids read comic books, to recognize the sound of a healthy turbine versus one that needed attention. Those skills had gotten her the job at Nellis, but they'd also made her notice things others missed. The first sign something was wrong came at 4:15. Maya was finishing the fuel load on aircraft 870257, a Block 30 F-16C that belonged to Captain Jessica Chun, when she noticed the hydraulic fluid levels were low. Not critically low, but lower than they should be for a training mission. She made a note on her tablet and moved to the next aircraft. The second aircraft had the same issue, then the third. By the time she'd serviced 8 jets, Maya's stomach was churning. 7 of the 8 aircraft showed signs of hydraulic fluid depletion. It wasn't enough to ground the planes, but it was enough to make landing dangerous. If the pilots pushed their aircraft hard during training maneuvers, Maya tried to push down the growing unease. Maybe it was a coincidence. Maybe the maintenance crews were running behind schedule. But her father's voice echoed in her head. Mia, aircraft don't lie. When they're trying to tell you something, you better listen. She finished her fuel runs and headed to the maintenance hangar, looking for Staff Sergeant Mike Thompson, the hydraulic systems specialist. The hangar was nearly empty, most of the crew having moved to the flight line for pre-mission checks. Maya found Thompson hunched over a computer terminal, entering data from his morning inspections. "Hey Mike," Maya said, trying to keep her voice casual. "I noticed some of the birds are running low on hydraulic fluid. Just wondering if there's scheduled maintenance I should know about." Thompson looked up, his weathered face creasing into a frown. "Low fluid? Which aircraft?" Maya rattled off the tail numbers. Thompson's frown deepened as he pulled up the maintenance logs on his screen. "That's weird. All these birds had full fluid checks yesterday evening. They shouldn't be down more than a few ounces overnight. Could be a leak in the system," Maya suggested, but even as she said it, she knew it didn't make sense. 7 aircraft developing hydraulic leaks on the same night? The odds were astronomical. Thompson was already reaching for his radio. I need to check those birds before they launch. If there's a systemic problem. Wait! Maya grabbed his arm. What if it's not a problem? What if someone did this on purpose? The question hung in the air between them. Thompson stared at her for a long moment, then slowly set down his radio. You're talking about sabotage. I'm talking about 32 pilots who might not make it home if those hydraulic systems fail during aggressive maneuvering. Maya's voice was steady, but her hands were shaking. And I'm talking about the fact that this training mission is supposed to simulate combat conditions. If someone wanted to cause maximum damage. Thompson was already moving toward the door. We need to report this. Chain of command by the book. But Maya had spent 3 years watching the chain of command work. She'd seen reports disappear into bureaucratic black holes, watched safety concerns get buried under operational pressures. By the time the proper authorities investigated her suspicions, those 32 aircraft would be airborne. Mike, how long before you can get the word to ground those planes? Thompson checked his watch. If I can reach the squadron commander immediately, maybe 20 minutes. But if he's already in the mission brief. The brief started 10 minutes ago. They stared at each other. Maya could hear the distant whine of jet engines starting up on the flight line. In military aviation, once the engines were running, stopping a mission required either a direct order from a very high-ranking officer or a genuine emergency. There's something else, Thompson said quietly. I've been tracking some irregularities. In our fuel delivery schedules, nothing major, just patterns that don't make sense. Extra deliveries on days when we're not flying, shortages when we should have plenty. Maya felt a chill that had nothing to do with the desert morning air. Someone's been planning this. Planning what, exactly? What's the endgame here? Before Maya could answer, the base's public address system crackled to life. All personnel. This is a base security alert. Report any suspicious activity immediately. Repeat, this is a base security alert. Maya and Thompson exchanged glances. The timing was too convenient. Someone knew they were getting close to discovering something. And now the base was on alert. In the confusion of a security situation, 32 compromised aircraft could take off, and by the time anyone realized what was happening, it would be too late. We're out of time, Maya said. Those planes are going to launch in 15 minutes, and there's no way to stop them through normal channels. Thompson nodded grimly. So what do we do? Maya looked out through the hangar doors toward the flight line, where she could see the pilots walking toward their aircraft. Captain Chun was among them, her helmet bag slung over her shoulder, completely unaware that her hydraulic system might fail when she needed it most. I have an idea, Maya said. But you're not going to like it. As she outlined her plan, Thompson's expression shifted from skepticism to horror to reluctant admiration. It was crazy, dangerous, and completely against every regulation in the book. It was also the only way to save 32 lives. The final piece of the puzzle clicked into place when Maya remembered something her father had told her years ago. Sometimes, Mia, the only way to save everyone is to be willing to lose everything. Yourself. She looked at Thompson one last time. Are you with me? He hesitated for only a moment. Yeah, let's do it. As they moved toward the flight line, Maya's mind was already racing through the technical challenges ahead. She had 15 minutes to prevent a disaster, and her plan required stealing a fighter jet she'd never flown, using skills she'd never tested, against an enemy she couldn't even identify. But for the first time in 3 years, Maya Rodriguez was no longer invisible. Maya's boots pounded across the tarmac as she and Thompson sprinted toward the active flight line. The morning sun was climbing higher, casting long shadows between the rows of fighter jets. Most of the aircraft were already buttoned up, their pilots running through pre-flight checks. Maya could hear the distinctive whine of a PU spinning. Up, the auxiliary power units that would soon give way to the thunderous roar of main engines. There, Thompson pointed toward the far end of the line. Aircraft 880421. She's scheduled for a maintenance check flight this afternoon, so she won't be part of the formation launch. Maya studied the lone F-16 sitting apart from the others. It was a Block 40 model, newer than most of the training. Aircraft with upgraded avionics and a more powerful engine. More importantly, it wasn't part of the compromised group. Keys? Maya asked. Thompson pulled a maintenance access card from his pocket. This'll get us into the cockpit, but Maya, you need to understand something. Even if you can start that bird, even if you can get it airborne, you've never flown a fighter jet. The F-16 pulls 9 Gs in a hard turn. It'll knock you unconscious before you can blink. Maya grabbed the card. My father didn't just teach me about engines. He taught me about flying too. I've got a private pilot's license, logged over 400 hours in civilian aircraft. I know it's not the same thing, but double quote, but nothing. This is insane. So is letting 32 pilots die because we couldn't figure out how to work the system fast enough. Maya was already moving toward the aircraft. Besides, I don't need to be a fighter pilot. I just need to get their attention. The plan was simple in concept, terrifying in execution. Maya would take off in the maintenance aircraft and intercept the formation before they reached the training area. She'd force them to return to base by any means necessary, even if it meant creating a mid-air emergency that would trigger an automatic abort of the mission. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. They reached the F-16, and Thompson quickly swiped his card at the maintenance panel. The aircraft systems came online with a soft hum. Maya grabbed the crew ladder and positioned it against the cockpit. Wait, Thompson said. There's something else you need to know. I've been thinking about those fuel delivery irregularities I mentioned. What if this isn't just about causing crashes? What if someone's been stealing fuel? Maya paused halfway. Up the ladder. Stealing jet fuel? For what? JP-8 fuel can be modified, concentrated. In the right hands, it becomes a very powerful explosive. We're talking about enough fuel to level several city blocks. The implications hit Maya like a physical blow. This wasn't just about sabotaging a training mission. Someone had been systematically draining fuel from the base's supply, replacing it with the minimum needed to maintain operations, while stockpiling the rest for something much worse. How much fuel are we talking about? Maya asked. Based on the discrepancies I've tracked over the past 6 months? Maybe 5,000 gallons. That's enough too. Thompson's voice trailed off as he calculated the potential damage. Maya climbed into the cockpit, her mind racing. The hydraulic sabotage was just the opening move. Someone wanted those 32 aircraft to crash, but not because they hated the military. They wanted the base's emergency response focused on a mass casualty event while they moved their stolen fuel to wherever they planned to use it. Thompson, you need to get to security right now. Tell them about the fuel theft. Don't mention what I'm doing, just focus on the missing JP-8. What about you? Maya was already strapping herself into the ejection seat, her hands moving over. Controls she'd studied in technical manuals but never operated. I'm going to buy us some time. Thompson started to protest, but Maya was already closing the canopy. Through the transparent aluminum, she could see him backing away from the aircraft, his face a mask of worry and determination. Maya's hands found the engine start switch. The F-16's Pratt & Whitney F-100 engine began its startup sequence with a low whine that quickly built to a roar. She'd heard this sound thousands of times from the ground, but from inside the cockpit, it was overwhelming, a vibration that seemed to shake her bones. The radio crackled to life. Maintenance 421, this is ground control. You are not scheduled for engine start at this time. Please shut down immediately. Maya keyed the radio. Ground control, this is an emergency engine run. We have a suspected fuel contamination issue and need to test the engine before the afternoon sortie. It was a lie, but a plausible one. Maya had learned enough about military bureaucracy to know that mentioning fuel contamination would make the controllers hesitant to interfere without checking with maintenance first. Copy that. 421. You are cleared to taxi to the engine run-up area. Maya's heart hammered as she released the brakes and began to taxi. The F-16 responded to her inputs, but it was nothing like the small civilian aircraft she'd flown. Every movement seemed amplified, the jet eager to leap into the sky at the slightest provocation. As she taxied past the main formation, Maya could see the pilots of the compromised aircraft going through their final checks. Captain Chun was in the lead aircraft, her helmet visible through the canopy. Maya wanted to scream a warning, but there was no way to communicate without revealing her deception. The engine run-up area was a large concrete pad designed for maintenance testing. Maya positioned the aircraft at the center and began running through the pre-flight checklist from memory. Her father had made her memorize dozens of aircraft checklists over the years, calling it mental discipline. She'd never imagined it would save lives. Tower, this is Viper 01, came a voice over the radio, Captain Chun's voice. Flight of 32, requesting clearance for departure. Viper 01, you are cleared for takeoff. Winds 280 at 15, altimeter 30.12. Maya's blood ran cold. The compromised aircraft were about to launch, and she was still on the ground. She looked at the engine instruments, everything was in the green, but she hadn't completed the full pre-flight sequence. Taking off now would be incredibly dangerous. Not taking off would be fatal for 32 pilots. Maya keyed the radio. Tower, maintenance 421, requesting immediate clearance to the active runway. Maintenance 421, negative. You are not on the flight schedule. Return to parking. Maya watched through her canopy as the first 4 F-16s rolled onto the runway. There, engines spooled up to full power, afterburners kicking in with twin cones of blue flame. In seconds, they would be airborne. She made a decision that would either save lives or end her career. Maya pushed the throttle forward and released the brakes. The F-16 leaped forward like a caged animal suddenly freed. She steered toward the runway, cutting across taxiways and grass strips, ignoring the increasingly frantic calls from the control tower. Maintenance 421, you are not cleared for takeoff. Return to parking immediately. The lead flight of F-16s was already rotating, their landing gear retraction as they climbed into the morning sky. Maya reached the runway threshold just as the second flight began their takeoff roll. She pulled onto the runway behind them, her aircraft shaking in the jet wash of the departing fighters. Tower, this is maintenance 421. I have a flight control emergency and need to get airborne immediately. It was another lie, but Maya was past caring about regulations. She could see the third flight of fighters preparing to enter the runway. In minutes, all 32 aircraft would be airborne and beyond her reach. Maya pushed the throttle to military power and felt the F-16's full thrust pin her back in the seat. The aircraft accelerated down the runway faster than anything she'd ever experienced. At 140 knots, she pulled back on the stick, and the fighter leaped into the sky with an eagerness that was both exhilarating and terrifying. The ground fell away beneath her with shocking speed. Maya found herself climbing through 1,000 feet, then 2,000, the Nevada desert spreading out below like a brown and gold carpet. She'd never seen the world from this perspective, and for a moment, she was overcome by the sheer beauty of it. Then reality crashed back. She was flying a stolen fighter jet, chasing 32 aircraft that could crash at any moment. with no clear plan for how to stop them. The radio was exploding with chatter from the control tower, base security, and the flight controllers trying to figure out what was happening. Maya switched to the training frequency and listened to the formation check-in. Captain Chun's voice was calm and professional as she led the massive formation toward the training area. They were flying at 15,000 feet, maintaining formation discipline, completely unaware of the danger lurking in their hydraulic systems. Maya climbed toward them, her hands growing more confident on the controls with each passing minute. The F-16 was responding to her inputs, and she was beginning to understand the relationship between pilot and machine that made fighter aviation possible. But understanding and mastery were two different things. As she approached the formation's altitude, Maya realized she had no idea how to intercept 32 fast-moving fighter jets without causing a mid-air collision. Her civilian flying experience was useless here. She'd never flown in formation, never approached another aircraft at 400 knots. Viper 01, this is maintenance 421, Maya called over the radio. I need you to abort this mission immediately and return to base. There was a long pause before Captain Chun responded. Maintenance 421, identify yourself. You are not part of this mission. Captain Chun, this is Maya Rodriguez from the fuel depot. The aircraft in your formation have been sabotaged. Your hydraulic systems are compromised. If you encounter heavy G-forces, you could lose flight controls. Another pause, longer this time. Maya could imagine the confusion in the cockpits of 32 fighter jets as pilots tried to process what they were hearing. Maya Rodriguez, the fuel attendant? How are you? Are you flying an F-16? Yes, ma'am, and I'm trying to save your lives. The radio exploded with chatter as pilots began talking over each other. Maya could hear the tension in their voices, the disbelief and growing concern. She had their attention, but she still needed to convince them to turn around. Viper 01, I need you to check your hydraulic pressure readings. All of you, look for levels that are lower than normal. Maya held her breath as she waited for their response. She was now flying alongside the massive formation, close enough to see the pilots' helmets turning toward her aircraft. The sight of 32 F-16s in perfect formation was breathtaking, but Maya knew it could become a nightmare in seconds. Maintenance 421, I'm showing hydraulic pressure at 2,800 psi. That's within normal parameters, but it's lower than when I started the mission. Same here, came another voice. Started at 3,000, now showing 2,850. More voices chimed in. Pilots. REPORTIN, G slightly low hydraulic pressure across the formation. Maya felt a surge of relief and terror. She'd been right about the sabotage, but the situation was even more dangerous than she'd imagined. The hydraulic systems were failing gradually, designed to give out during high-G maneuvering when the pilots would be most vulnerable. Viper 01, you need to turn this formation around right now. No aggressive maneuvers, no high-G turns. Just a gentle return to base. Maintenance 421, I need authorization from. Captain Chun's words were cut off by a new voice on the radio. This is Nellis Tower. All aircraft return to base immediately. We have a base security emergency in progress. Maya's blood ran cold. Thompson had gotten through to security, but now the base was in lockdown. That meant whoever was behind the sabotage knew their plan had been discovered. The stolen fuel was probably already being moved to its final destination. As the formation began a gentle turn back toward Nellis, Maya realized the real fight was just beginning. They'd saved the pilots, but the masterminds behind the sabotage were still out there, armed with enough explosive power to level a city block. And Maya was the only one who could stop them. Maya watched the formation of 32 F-16s execute. A perfect turn back toward Nellis Air Force Base. their wings catching the morning sunlight like silver arrows against the desert sky. Captain Chun's voice crackled over the radio, coordinating the return with the calm professionalism that had made her a squadron leader. But Maya could hear the underlying tension, 32 pilots suddenly aware their aircraft might kill them. At any moment. Viper 01, this is Nellis approach. You have priority handling for emergency landing. Medical and fire rescue are standing by. Maya flew parallel to the formation, maintaining visual contact while staying clear of their flight path. The F-16 beneath her was performing flawlessly, responding to her inputs with precision that still amazed her. But she knew her real test was yet to come. Her radio crackled with a new voice, one she didn't recognize. Maintenance 421, this is Colonel Marcus Webb, Base Commander. You are ordered to land immediately and report to my office. Maya keyed her. Radio, Colonel Webb, with respect, I can't do that right now. We have a bigger problem than unauthorized aircraft operation. Rodriguez, I know who you are. You're the fuel depot worker who stole a $40 million fighter jet. Land now, or I'll have you shot down. The threat hung in the air like a physical presence. Maya knew Webb wasn't bluffing. The base had surface-to-air missiles and unauthorized. Aircraft were considered potential threats. But she also knew something the colonel didn't. Sir, Thompson should have briefed you about the fuel theft. Someone's been stealing JP-8 for months, and they're about to use it. The hydraulic sabotage was just a distraction. We're investigating Thompson's claims, but that doesn't give you the right to. Colonel, where's the fuel depot supervisor? Brandon Walsh? Have you seen him this morning? There was a pause before Webb responded. Walsh called in sick. What does that have to do with anything? Maya's stomach dropped. Walsh had been acting strange for weeks, arriving early and staying late, always checking his phone. She'd attributed it to dedication, but now she realized he'd been coordinating something much more sinister. Sir, Walsh has been running the fuel depot for 2 years. He'd know exactly how to manipulate delivery schedules, how to hide missing fuel in the paperwork. And he'd know the hydraulic maintenance schedule for every aircraft on the base. Maya banked her aircraft slightly, keeping pace with the returning formation while her mind raced through the implications. Walsh had access to everything fuel. Delivery schedules, maintenance records, even the training mission flight plans. He was the perfect inside man for a sophisticated operation. Colonel, I need you to check Walsh's personnel file. Look for financial problems, family issues, anything that might make him vulnerable to recruitment. Rodriguez, you're not running this investigation. Land your aircraft now. But Maya was already thinking 3 steps ahead. If Walsh was involved, he'd know the base was compromised. He'd be moving the stolen fuel right now, probably to a location where it could do maximum damage. Las Vegas was only 30 minutes away by Rota, perfect target for a fuel-air explosive that could level several city blocks. The radio crackled again, this time with Thompson's voice. Maya, this is Thompson. I'm with base security. We found discrepancies in the fuel logs going back 8 months. Someone's been systematically draining the storage tanks. Thompson, where's Walsh? That's the problem. His apartment is empty. Looks like he cleared out in a hurry. But we found something else, rental agreements for a warehouse in Henderson, Nevada. Paid for with cash, signed yesterday. Henderson. Maya's blood ran cold. Henderson was a suburb of Las Vegas, home to nearly 300,000 people. If someone detonated 5,000 gallons of weaponized jet fuel in a populated area, the casualties would be catastrophic. Thompson, how long ago did Walsh leave? His neighbors saw a moving truck at his apartment around 0200 hours. But Maya, there's more. We ran his phone records. He's been in contact with a group the FBI has been tracking, domestic terrorists with ties to international networks. Maya felt the pieces clicking together. This wasn't just about stealing fuel or sabotaging aircraft. It was a coordinated attack designed to cause maximum chaos and destruction. The aircraft sabotage would have tied up emergency resources while the real attack happened in Las Vegas. "Colonel Webb, are you getting this?" Maya asked. "Affirmative. We're coordinating with FBI and local law enforcement. But Rodriguez, you still need to land that aircraft." Maya looked down at the sprawling desert below, then at the formation of F-16s ahead of her. The pilots were safely heading home, but thousands of innocent people were still in danger. And she was the only one in a position to do something about it. "Sir, I need to get to Henderson. If Walsh is moving that fuel, I might be able to stop him before he reaches his target." "Absolutely not. You're a fuel depot worker, not a fighter pilot. You've done enough." But Maya was already peeling away from the formation, banking her F-16 toward the southeast. The warehouse district in Henderson was visible from altitude, a grid of industrial buildings and storage facilities. Somewhere down there, Brandon Walsh was preparing to commit mass murder. "Maya, don't do this," Thompson's voice came over the radio. "You've saved those pilots. Let law enforcement handle the rest." Maya's hands tightened on the controls. "Thompson, how long will it take FBI to coordinate with local police, get search warrants, and check every warehouse in Henderson? How long?" Before Walsh realizes his diversion failed and accelerates his timeline. She was right, and everyone listening knew it. In a perfect world, there would be time for proper procedures, backup plans, and coordinated responses. But the world wasn't perfect, and Maya was flying a fighter jet over a city where hundreds of thousands of people were going about their morning routines, unaware that death was being prepared for them. Maya pushed the throttle forward, accelerating toward Henderson. The F-16 responded with a surge of power that pressed her back in the seat. At 500 knots, the landscape below became a blur of desert and urban sprawl. She was covering ground faster than any ground-based response team could possibly move. "Maintenance 421, you are in violation of restricted airspace. Return to base immediately, or you will be engaged." Maya ignored the warning. She was committed now, flying toward a confrontation she wasn't trained for, in an aircraft she barely knew how to operate. But she was also the only person who understood the full scope of the threat. As Henderson grew larger in her windscreen, Maya began looking for signs of unusual activity. The warehouse district was vast, hundreds of identical buildings spread across several square miles. Finding Walsh would be like looking for a needle in a haystack, except the needle was primed to explode. Then she saw a column of black smoke rising from the industrial district. Not the thick, oily smoke of a building fire, but the thin, acrid smoke of burning chemicals. Someone was destroying evidence, probably preparing to move the fuel to its final destination. Maya banked toward the smoke, descending to get a better view. As she approached, she could see a warehouse with several trucks parked outside. Men in civilian clothes were loading containers into the trucks, working with the urgency of people who knew they were running out of time. "Base, this is maintenance. 421. I have visual on suspicious activity in Henderson. Multiple vehicles, personnel loading cargo. Grid coordinates 36.0947 north, 115.0372 west." "Maya, get out of there." Thompson's voice was strained. "You're not equipped for this." But Maya was already circling the warehouse, using the F-16 sensors to get a better picture of what was happening. Below, the thermal imaging showed at least 12 people, possibly more, inside the building. The trucks were large enough to carry the stolen fuel, and they were almost finished loading. As Maya completed her second orbit, she saw something that made her blood freeze. One of the men below was pointing at her aircraft, and suddenly everyone was moving with panic-driven speed. They knew they'd been discovered. Walsh emerged from the warehouse, his face visible even from altitude. He was shouting orders, waving his arms, clearly trying to accelerate the loading process. The trucks were almost ready to leave, carrying their deadly cargo toward an unknown target. Maya made a decision that would either save thousands of lives or end her own. She armed the F-16's 20mm cannon. The fighter carried 511 rounds of ammunition, designed for air-to-air combat, but equally effective against ground targets. Maya had never fired a weapon in anger, never even held a gun outside of basic military training. But she understood the physics of what she was about to do. "Base, this is Maintenance 421. I'm going to engage the target." "Maya, no." Thompson's voice was desperate. "You'll kill yourself. Better than letting them kill thousands of innocent people." Maya rolled the F-16 into a shallow dive, lining up the warehouse in her heads-up display. The cannon's targeting system was more sophisticated than anything she'd ever used, but the basic principle was simple: point the aircraft at the target and pull the trigger dot at 2,000 feet. Maya fired. The cannon roared to life, sending a stream of 20mm rounds toward the warehouse at 6,000 rounds per minute. The recoil was tremendous, the aircraft bucking and shaking as Maya fought to maintain control. Below, she could see the rounds impacting the building, sending up clouds of dust and debris. But Maya wasn't trying to kill anyone. She was trying to destroy the fuel before it could be weaponized. The first burst tore through the warehouse roof, and Maya saw a flash of orange flame as the stolen JP-8 ignited. The explosion was smaller than she'd expected. Jet fuel burned rather than exploded, unless it was properly aerosolized. But it was enough to destroy the stockpile and send the loading crews scrambling for cover. Maya pulled up hard, the G-forces pressing her down in the seat as the F-16 climbed away from the target. Below, the warehouse was fully engulfed in flames, black smoke billowing into the desert sky. The trucks were speeding away, but they were empty now, their cargo destroyed. "Target neutralized," Maya reported, surprised by how calm her voice sounded. "Fuel stockpile destroyed, suspects fleeing the scene." "Maya, are you hurt?" Thompson's voice was shaky with relief. "Negative. Aircraft is undamaged. Pilot is..." Well, pilot is wondering what the hell she just did. For the first time since this nightmare began, Maya allowed herself a moment of relief. The immediate threat was over. The stolen fuel was destroyed. The sabotaged aircraft were safely returning to base. And thousands of people in Las Vegas would go about their day never knowing how close they'd come to disaster. But as Maya turned her F-16 back toward Nellis, she realized the hardest part was still ahead. She'd saved lives, but she'd also stolen a military aircraft, fired weapons without authorization, and violated more regulations than she could count. Her career was over, and prison was a very real possibility. Still, as she watched the smoke from the destroyed warehouse fade behind her, Maya felt something she hadn't experienced in years: pride. For 3 years, she'd been invisible, just another cog in the military machine. Today, she'd proven that sometimes the most important person in the room is the one nobody notices. The radio crackled one more time. "Maintenance 421. This is Colonel Webb. Outstanding work. Now get that bird on the ground before I have to explain to the Pentagon why a fuel attendant is flying better than half my pilots." Maya smiled for the first time all day. "Roger that, Colonel. Coming home." The approach to Nellis Air Force Base felt different than Maya's hasty departure 3 hours earlier. Then, she'd been a desperate woman stealing an aircraft to prevent a catastrophe. Now, she was returning as something else entirely, though she wasn't sure what that something was. "Maintenance 421, Nellis Tower. You're cleared for the straight-in. Approach, runway 21 left. Emergency vehicles are standing by." Maya keyed her radio. "Tower, I don't need emergency vehicles. The aircraft is undamaged." "Negative 421. Those vehicles aren't for the aircraft." Maya understood. they were for her. Protocol demanded that anyone who'd engaged in unauthorized combat operations be immediately detained and evaluated. She was about to land not as a hero, but as a potential threat to national security. The F-16's landing gear locked into position with a reassuring thunk. Maya had practiced this approach in her mind dozens of times during her flight back from Henderson, but the reality was still nerve-wracking. She was landing a fighter jet with less than 4 hours of flight time, most of it spent in combat situations. Runway threshold passed beneath her, and Maya felt the main gear touch down with a slight bounce. She deployed the drag chute and applied the brakes, bringing the $30 million aircraft to a controlled stop. For a moment, she just sat in the cockpit, hands shaking as the adrenaline finally caught up with her. Ground crew swarmed the aircraft as Maya shut down the engine. Through her canopy, she could see security police vehicles positioned around the flight line, their occupants watching her with weapons ready. Beyond them, a crowd had gathered: pilots, maintenance workers, and officers drawn by news of the morning's extraordinary events. Maya opened the canopy and immediately felt the desert heat wash over her. She'd been so focused on flying that she'd forgotten how hot Nevada mornings could be. A crew chief appeared at the side of the aircraft, positioning a ladder for her descent. "Ma'am, I'm Sergeant Rodriguez, no relation, I assume. I need you to keep your hands visible and follow my instructions exactly." Maya nodded, understanding the precautions. From the ground crew's perspective, she was an unknown quantity who'd just proven capable of extremely dangerous actions. She climbed down slowly, keeping her movements deliberate and non-threatening. Colonel Webb was waiting at the bottom of the ladder, flanked by 2 security police officers. He was a tall man with graying hair and the kind of weathered face that came from decades of military service. His expression was unreadable as Maya reached the tarmac. "Rodriguez, you've had quite a morning." "Yes, sir. I'm ready to face the consequences of my actions." Webb studied her for a long moment. "Walk with me." They moved away from the aircraft, the security police maintaining a discreet distance. Maya could feel hundreds of eyes watching her, but she kept her focus on Colonel Webb. Whatever came next, she'd face it with the same determination that had carried her through the morning's crisis. "Tell me something, Rodriguez. What did you think would happen when you stole that F-16? Maya considered the question carefully. "Honestly, sir, I thought I'd probably crash and die. But I also thought 32 pilots would die if I didn't. Try something. And when you engaged that warehouse in Henderson, I thought I might start World War III, but I also thought thousands of innocent people would die if I didn't stop those trucks." Webb nodded slowly. "You made decisions that trained officers with decades of experience would have struggled with. You assessed situations, adapted to changing circumstances, and achieved mission success despite having no formal training for any of it." They reached the base operations building, where a crowd of personnel had gathered. Maya recognized many faces: pilots she'd fueled, maintenance workers she'd shared coffee with, officers who'd barely acknowledged her existence for 3 years. Now they were all staring at her with expressions ranging from admiration to disbelief. "Rodriguez, what you did today was technically illegal, operationally unsound, and completely against regulations." Webb's voice carried across the crowd. "It was also the most remarkable display of initiative and courage I've seen in 30 years of military service." Maya felt her knees go weak with relief. She'd expected court-martial proceedings, not commendation. "However," Webb continued, "we still have a problem. The FBI has arrested 12 individuals in connection with the Henderson warehouse, including your supervisor Brandon Walsh, but they're part of a larger network, and this attack was apparently just the beginning." Thompson appeared at Maya's side, his face grim. "We've been going through Walsh's communications. This wasn't an isolated cell. They were coordinating with groups in 3 other states. Similar operations at Air Force bases in Texas, Colorado, and Florida. Maya felt a chill despite the desert heat. You mean this is happening elsewhere? We think so. The FBI is coordinating with base security at all 3 locations, but they're working from incomplete intelligence. Walsh wasn't talking, at least not until about 20 minutes ago. What changed 20 minutes ago? Webb smiled grimly. Your little fireworks display in Henderson. When the other cells realized their Nevada operation had been compromised, they started accelerating their timelines. Suddenly, Walsh became very interested in cooperation. The implications were staggering. Maya had stumbled onto a coordinated domestic terrorism operation targeting multiple military installations. Her actions hadn't just prevented one attack, they'd exposed an entire network. Sir, what do you need me to do? Webb and Thompson exchanged glances. That's complicated, Rodriguez. Technically, you're under arrest for theft of government property, unauthorized use of military equipment, and about 15 other violations. But you're also the only person who's actually engaged these terrorists in combat and succeeded. The other bases need someone who understands their operational pattern, Thompson added. Someone who can think like they do, spot the signs they missed. Maya began to understand where this was heading. You want me to help stop the other attacks? We want you to lead the response teams, Webb corrected. You've proven you can make the hard decisions under pressure. The question is whether you're willing to do it again. Before Maya could answer, her radio crackled with an emergency broadcast. All stations, this is Buckley Air Force Base, Colorado. We have confirmed sabotage of multiple aircraft systems. Request immediate assistance. Webb looked at Maya. Rodriguez, there's a transport aircraft fueled and ready for departure. We can have you in Colorado in 2 hours. Are you willing to go? Maya thought about her small apartment, her quiet life, the safety of being invisible. Then she thought about Captain Chun and 31 other pilots who'd gone home to their families because someone had been willing to take an impossible risk. Sir, I'll need Thompson and a team of maintenance specialists who understand fuel systems and hydraulic sabotage. Done. And I'll need direct communication with base commanders at all affected installations. No bureaucratic delays, no chain of command restrictions. Granted. And sir, I want authorization to take whatever actions I deem necessary to protect personnel and prevent attacks, in writing. Webb raised an eyebrow. Rodriguez, you're asking for extraordinary authority. Sir, these people just tried to kill 32 Air Force pilots and detonate explosives in a civilian population center. Extraordinary threats require extraordinary responses. Webb pulled out his phone and began typing. Consider it done. You'll have a signed authorization before you leave for Colorado. As Webb walked away to coordinate the response, Thompson moved closer to Maya. Are you sure about this? What happened today was incredible, but what you're signing up for? This could go on for weeks, maybe months. Maya looked across the flight line at the F-16 she'd flown that morning. The aircraft was already being refueled and inspected, ready for its next mission. In a few hours, it would probably be carrying another pilot into training or combat, serving its purpose without fanfare or recognition. Thompson, for 3 years I've been invisible. Today I found out that sometimes being invisible means you see things others miss. Maybe that's not a weakness. Maybe that's exactly what we need. Within an hour, Maya found herself boarding a C-130 transport aircraft loaded with equipment and personnel. The cargo bay contained everything they might need: specialized testing, equipment, emergency repair parts, and a team of experts who'd volunteered for what was essentially a counter-terrorism mission. As the transport lifted off from Nellis, Maya strapped herself into a web seat and tried to process everything that had happened. This morning she'd been Maya Rodriguez, fuel depot worker. Now she was apparently Maya Rodriguez, counter-terrorism specialist and fighter pilot. The irony wasn't lost on her. She'd spent years trying to be noticed, trying to prove herself worthy of advancement and recognition. Instead, she'd found her purpose by staying in the background, watching and listening while others dismissed her as unimportant. "Maya," Thompson said, settling into the seat beside her. "There's something else you should know. The FBI traced the funding for these operations. This isn't just domestic terrorism. There's foreign money involved, a lot of it." "How much money?" "Enough to fund operations at a dozen military bases. What we stopped today was just the proof of concept. If it had worked, if those pilots had crashed and the Las Vegas attack had succeeded, they were planning to go nationwide." Maya stared out the small window at the landscape passing below. Somewhere down there, other Brandon Walshes were preparing. Other attacks, recruiting other insiders, exploiting the trust that made military operations possible. "Thompson, when we get to Colorado, I want you to check every fuel delivery for the past year. Not just the obvious discrepancies. Look for patterns, timing anomalies, anything that doesn't fit the normal operational rhythm." "Already on it." "I've also contacted maintenance chiefs at the other bases. We're going to audit every aircraft system that could be sabotaged without triggering immediate safety protocols." The C-130 banked toward Colorado, carrying Maya toward her next mission. She didn't know what they'd find at Buckley Air Force Base, but she knew one thing for certain: she was no longer invisible. For better or worse, Maya Rodriguez had become exactly the kind of person she'd always wanted to be. Someone who made a difference. As the transport climbed toward cruising altitude, Maya closed her eyes and allowed herself a moment of rest. The next few days would test everything she'd learned, everything she'd become. But for the first time in years, she felt ready for whatever came next. The fuel attendant who'd stolen a fighter jet to save a squadron was about to become something much more: a guardian watching over the guardians, protecting those who protected everyone else. And she was just getting started. The Q-130's cargo bay felt like a freezer compared to the Nevada desert heat Maya had left behind. She pulled her jacket tighter as the transport aircraft descended through Colorado's thin mountain air toward Buckley Air Force Base. Through the small porthole, she could see the Rocky Mountains rising like jagged teeth against the afternoon sky, their snow-capped peaks a stark reminder that she was far from the familiar desert landscape of home. 2 minutes out, called the loadmaster. "Buckley Tower reports the base is in full lockdown. No aircraft movements, all personnel restricted to essential duties only." Maya checked her equipment one final time. In the past 4 hours, she'd gone from fuel depot worker to the leader of a counter-terrorism response team. The weight of responsibility felt heavier than the tactical vest she now wore. Loaded with communications gear and emergency equipment, Thompson was reviewing satellite imagery on a ruggedized tablet, his face illuminated by the screen's glow. "Maya, look at this. Buckley's fuel storage facility is 3 times larger than Nellis. If someone's been siphoning fuel here like they did in Nevada, we could be looking at 15,000 gallons or more." The number hit Maya like a physical blow. 15,000 gallons of weaponized jet fuel could level downtown Denver. The terrorists weren't just planning another Henderson, they were preparing for something catastrophic. The C-130 touched down with a slight bump, its massive tires gripping the Colorado runway. As the aircraft taxied toward the terminal, Maya could see security vehicles positioned around the flight line, their red and blue lights creating an eerie disco effect in the late afternoon light. "Remember," Maya said to her team as they prepared to disembark, "we're not here to take over their operation. We're here to help them find what we found at Nellis. Stay professional, stay focused, and trust the local expertise." But as the cargo ramp lowered and Maya stepped onto the tarmac, she immediately sensed something different about Buckley. Where Nellis had felt surprised but controlled during the crisis, Buckley felt genuinely panicked. Personnel were moving with the jerky, inefficient motion of people who weren't sure what they were supposed to be doing. Colonel Sandra Mitchell met them at the bottom of the ramp. She was younger than Colonel Webb, probably in her early 40s, with the kind of intense focus that suggested she'd been dealing with a crisis for hours without rest. Rodriguez? I'm Colonel Mitchell. Thank you for coming so quickly. We've got a situation that's deteriorating by the hour. Maya fell into step beside the colonel as they walked toward the base operations center. What's the current status, ma'am? At 1400 hours, our maintenance crews discovered hydraulic fluid contamination in 8 F-16s scheduled for a training flight. When we expanded the inspection, we found similar contamination in 16 additional aircraft. That's when we called. Nellis. Maya's mind raced through the implications. 24 aircraft was nearly twice the number that had been sabotaged at Nellis. Either the Buckley operation was larger, or it had been running longer. Colonel, have you identified the source of the contamination? That's where it gets complicated. The contamination appears to be deliberate. Someone added a chemical agent that would cause gradual hydraulic failure under stress. But we can't figure out how it was introduced into the system. They entered the operations center, a bustling room filled with monitors, communication equipment, and personnel working with the intense focus of people fighting an invisible enemy. Maya immediately recognized the controlled chaos. It was the same energy she'd felt at Nellis when everyone realized they were under attack. Ma'am, I need to see your fuel depot operations and speak with whoever's in charge of fuel delivery. Scheduling. Colonel Mitchell's expression darkened. That's our other problem. Our fuel depot supervisor, Captain Eric Barnes, hasn't reported for duty. We sent security to his quarters, but he's nowhere to be found. Maya felt the familiar chill of recognition. Another inside man, another trusted supervisor who'd turned against his own people. The pattern was becoming clear. The terrorists had spent months, maybe years, identifying and recruiting personnel with access to critical systems. Thompson, Maya called to her teammate. Start running the fuel delivery logs. Look for the same patterns we found at Nellis: extra deliveries, missing fuel, anything that doesn't match operational requirements. Already on it, Thompson replied, settling in at a computer terminal. But Maya, there's something else. I've been monitoring communications from the other targeted bases. Eglin Air Force Base in Florida just reported finding explosive devices in their fuel storage area. The operations center fell silent. Maya could feel every eye in the room turning toward her, waiting for guidance from someone who'd been doing this job for less than 8 hours. Colonel Mitchell, I need to speak with your base security chief immediately. And I need access to Captain Barnes's personnel files, financial records, communication logs, everything. Rodriguez, I understand you've been through this before. But we have protocols. Ma'am, with respect, protocols didn't stop 32 pilots from almost dying at Nellis. Protocols didn't prevent a terrorist attack in Las Vegas. What stopped those things was people willing to act fast and think outside the box. Colonel Mitchell studied Maya for a moment, then nodded. Johnson, she called to a nearby officer. Get Rodriguez everything she needs. Full access, no restrictions. Maya spent the next hour immersed in data, building a picture of the Buckley operation that was both similar to and different from what had happened at Nellis. Captain Barnes had been stealing fuel for nearly a year, but in smaller quantities, and with more sophisticated concealment methods. He'd also been recruiting accomplices, 2 maintenance workers and a civilian contractor, who serviced the hydraulic systems. Maya, look at this, Thompson said, pointing to his screen. Barnes has been communicating with someone using encrypted messaging apps. The messages are coded, but the timing correlates with fuel deliveries and maintenance schedules. Can we trace the other party? FBI is working on it, but these guys are sophisticated. They're using multiple relay servers and changing encryption keys regularly. Maya stood up, pacing the small area around the computer terminal. Something was bothering her about the Buckley operation, something that didn't fit the pattern from Nellis. Thompson, at Nellis, the plan was to cause crashes during training and use the emergency response as cover for a fuel truck bombing in Las Vegas. What's the target here in Colorado? What would they bomb with 15,000 gallons of stolen fuel? Thompson pulled up a map of the Denver metropolitan area. Denver International Airport is only 20 miles away. Or they could target downtown Denver, the Colorado state capital, maybe. Even NORAD at Cheyenne Mountain. But Maya was shaking her head. No, that doesn't feel right. Those are obvious targets, the kind that would trigger massive security responses. These people are smarter than that. She walked to the large situational awareness display at the front of the operations center, studying the map of Colorado and surrounding states. Buckley Air Force Base was positioned on the eastern edge of the Denver metropolitan area, with major highways running in all directions. Then it hit her. Thompson, what's the date of the next major political event in this region? Thompson consulted his tablet. There's a governor's conference in Aspen next week. All 50 state governors plus federal officials. It's being billed as a major policy summit. Maya felt her blood run cold. Aspen was a small mountain town accessible by only a few roads. If terrorists detonated a massive fuel air explosive on one of those access routes during the conference, they could kill dozens of state governors and potentially cripple the entire U.S. political system. Colonel Mitchell, Maya called across the operations center. I need to speak with the FBI liaison. Immediately. We're not dealing with a local attack. This is an assassination plot targeting the governor's conference. The next few hours blurred together in a frenzy of phone calls, data analysis, and coordination with federal agencies. Maya found herself at the center of a widening investigation that now involved the Secret Service, FBI, and multiple state law enforcement agencies. The breakthrough came when Thompson discovered Barnes's escape route. Credit card records showed he'd rented a cabin near Vail, Colorado, less than 30 miles from Aspen. More importantly, rental records indicated he'd been storing equipment there for months. Maya, we need to move on this location tonight, Colonel. Mitchell said. FBI wants to coordinate a joint operation, but they're talking about waiting until morning for proper planning. Maya thought about the timeline. The governor's conference started in 3 days. If Barnes was following the same pattern as Nellis, he'd want to move his explosive materials into position at least 24 hours before the attack. That meant they had tonight, maybe less. Colonel, I need a helicopter and a team of volunteers. We can't wait for FBI planning cycles. Rodriguez, you're talking about conducting a raid on a terrorist safe house. You're not trained for that kind of operation, Maya smiled grimly. Ma'am, 12 hours ago, I wasn't trained to fly a fighter jet or conduct air-to-ground attacks either. But sometimes training isn't as important as being willing to do what needs to be done. An hour later, Maya found herself in the back of a UH-60 Black Hawk helicopter, flying through the Colorado mountains toward Barnes's hideout. The team with her included Thompson, 2 Air Force security police officers, and a bomb disposal expert from the local FBI office. The cabin was isolated, accessible only by a winding mountain road that would make ground approach nearly impossible without detection. But the helicopter could insert the team on a ridge overlooking the target, giving them tactical advantage and multiple escape routes. 2 minutes out, called the pilot. I'm seeing vehicle movement around the target building. Looks like they're loading trucks. Maya peered through the helicopter's window at the scene below. In the gathering darkness, she could see lights around the large cabin and what appeared to be several trucks parked in a clearing. People were moving between the vehicles and the building, clearly engaged in some kind of loading operation. They're accelerating their timeline, Maya said into her headset. We're out of time for careful planning. The helicopter settled onto the ridge with barely a whisper, its specially modified rotors designed for quiet operations. Maya and her team quickly disembarked, moving through the pine trees toward the cabin below. As they approached the target, Maya could see the full scope of the operation. Barnes and at least 6 accomplices were loading barrels of what was obviously the stolen jet fuel into 3 large trucks. The vehicles were already nearly full, suggesting they'd been working for hours. "Maya, look at the license plates," Thompson whispered. "Those trucks are registered in New Mexico, Wyoming, and Utah. This isn't just about Colorado. They're distributing the explosive material across multiple states." Maya realized they'd stumbled onto something far larger than anyone had imagined. This wasn't just a plot to attack the governor's conference, it was a coordinated network preparing simultaneous attacks across the western United States. She keyed her radio. "All stations, this is Rodriguez. We have confirmed terrorist activity at target location. Multiple vehicles being loaded with explosive materials. Request immediate backup and coordination with federal agencies." But even as she called for help, Maya knew backup wouldn't arrive in time. The trucks were nearly loaded, and once they dispersed into the mountain highway system, tracking them would be nearly impossible. For the second time in one day, Maya Rodriguez faced a choice between following procedures and saving lives. And for the second time, she chose to act. "Team, we're going to stop those trucks from leaving, whatever it takes." Maya crouched behind a fallen pine log, studying the terrorist compound through night vision binoculars. The scene below was organized. Chaos Barnes and his team working with military precision to load the final barrels of weaponized fuel. The 3 trucks were nearly ready to depart, each one carrying enough explosive power to level a city block. "Rodriguez, this is FBI Special Agent Kate Morrison," crackled through her earpiece. "I'm 15 minutes out with a tactical team. Do not engage until we arrive." Maya keyed her radio quietly. "Agent Morrison, in 15 minutes, those trucks will be on 3 different highways heading to unknown targets. We can't wait. Rodriguez, you're not trained for tactical operations. Stand down." Maya looked at Thompson, who was positioned 20 meters to her left with the bomb disposal expert. The security police officers had moved to flank the compound from the south. They were outnumbered 2-1, facing an enemy that had spent months planning for this moment. But Maya had learned something important that day. Sometimes the most dangerous person in a fight is the one with nothing left to lose. "Team, here's the plan," Maya whispered into her radio. "Thompson, I need you to disable the trucks. Cut fuel lines, slash tires, anything to prevent them from leaving. Johnson and Reeves, the security police officers, create a diversion from the south side. Martinez, the bomb expert, you're with me. We're going after Barnes directly." "Maya, that's suicide," Thompson protested. "There are 7 of them down there, and they're armed." Maya had counted the weapons herself. At least 4 rifles and multiple handguns were visible among the terrorists. But she'd also noticed something else. Their body language suggested they weren't expecting resistance. They'd grown comfortable, confident in their isolation and planning. "Thompson, 12 hours ago, I'd never flown a fighter jet. 6 hours ago, I'd never conducted air-to-ground combat. I'm starting to think impossible is just another word for untested." Maya signaled the team to move. She and Martinez began working their way down the slope toward the main cabin, while Thompson circled toward the vehicles. The night air was thin and cold, carrying the scent of pine and diesel fuel from the trucks below. As they approached the compound, Maya could hear Barnes giving orders to his team. His voice carried the confident tone of someone who believed his plan was proceeding perfectly. That confidence was about to become his weakness. "Final load going into truck 3, Barnes called out. "Shun, take truck 1 and head for Utah. Williams, truck 2 goes to Wyoming. I'll take truck 3 to New Mexico. Remember, no radio contact until you reach your staging areas." Maya's blood ran cold. The attacks were planned for 3 different states, probably timed to coincide with the governor's conference to maximize psychological impact. 50 state governors gathering while simultaneous bombings erupted across the western United States would create the kind of chaos that could destabilize the entire government. Thompson's voice crackled through her earpiece. In position near the vehicles. I can see the fuel lines on trucks 1 and 2, but truck 3 is blocked by personnel. Maya studied the layout. Barnes was standing near truck 3, supervising the final loading. If Thompson tried to disable it, he'd be exposed to direct fire from multiple shooters. Thompson, wait for my signal. Martinez, when I move, you take out their communications equipment. That radio antenna on the cabin roof, can you reach it? Martinez nodded, checking his equipment. As a bomb disposal expert, he carried tools that could cut through almost anything. Maya took a deep breath and made a decision that would have seemed impossible that morning. She stood up and walked into the light. Captain Barnes, this is Maya Rodriguez from Nellis Air Force Base. You're under arrest. The effect was electric. 7 armed terrorists spun toward her voice, weapons raising, but they hesitated for a crucial second. Maya was a lone woman walking into their compound with her hands visible, apparently unarmed. It didn't compute as a threat. That second of hesitation was all Thompson needed. He rolled under truck 1 and began slashing fuel lines with a tactical knife. Martinez simultaneously cut the communications antenna, severing Barnes's connection to his network. You, Barnes snarled, recognizing Maya from intelligence reports. You're the one who destroyed our Las Vegas operation. That's right, and I'm here to stop this one too. Barnes laughed, a sound without humor. You think you can stop us? We have contingencies you can't imagine. Even if you prevent these trucks from leaving, there are cells in 6 other states ready to execute similar operations. Maya felt her heart sink. The conspiracy was even larger than they'd suspected. But she forced herself to project confidence she didn't feel. Then I guess I'll have to stop them too. The standoff lasted only seconds before Barnes made his fatal mistake. He assumed Maya was bluffing, that she was alone and helpless. He gestured to his men to spread out and surround her. Instead, Johnson and Reeves opened fire from the south side of the compound, their shots carefully aimed to disable rather than kill. The FBI would need these terrorists alive for interrogation. Maya dove for cover as the shootout erupted around her in the chaos. Thompson finished disabling truck 1 and moved to truck 2. Martinez had cut the main power lines, plunging half the compound into darkness. But Barnes and 2 of his men were still near truck 3, the most dangerous of the vehicles. Maya low-crawled toward the truck, using the confusion to get closer to her target. She could hear Barnes shouting orders, trying to coordinate his men's response to the unexpected attack. But his voice carried a note of panic now the careful plan was falling apart. Chun, get truck 3 started. We can still salvage this operation. Maya saw Chun running toward the truck's cab. If he managed to start the engine and escape with 5,000 gallons of explosive fuel, the mission would be a failure. She had one chance to stop him. Maya launched herself from cover, tackling Chun as he reached for the truck's door handle. They went down hard on the gravel, Maya's civilian training no match for Chun's military background. But desperation made her strong, and she managed to keep him away from the vehicle long enough for Martinez to reach them. Maya, get clear, Martinez shouted, producing a device Maya didn't recognize. She rolled away just as Martinez activated what appeared to be an electromagnetic pulse generator. The truck's engine died with a sudden silence, its electronic systems fried beyond repair. Truck 3 is disabled, Maya reported into her radio. Thompson, status on the other vehicles? Fuel lines cut on both trucks. They're not going anywhere. The firefight was winding down. Johnson and Reeves had successfully contained most of Barnes's team, using non-lethal tactics to subdue the terrorists. Maya could hear sirens in the distance. FBI backup was finally arriving, but Barnes himself was still free, and Maya could see him moving toward a small building at the edge of the compound. She followed, knowing that whatever was in that building, Barnes considered it important enough to risk capture. The building turned out to be a communication center, filled with radio equipment and computer terminals. Barnes was frantically typing commands into a laptop, trying to send messages to his network. "It's over, Barnes," Maya said, entering the building with her weapon drawn. "Your trucks are disabled. Your team is captured. Surrender now." Barnes turned toward her, his face a mask of fanatical determination. "You think this is over? This was just the beginning. We have sleeper cells in every major city, weapon stockpiles you'll never find. You've delayed us, not stopped us." Maya studied his expression, looking for signs of deception. But she could see he believed what he was saying. This conspiracy went far deeper than anyone had imagined. "Maybe," Maya said. "But every journey begins with a single step. And every conspiracy ends when someone refuses to be intimidated." She could hear boots on the gravel outside, FBI agents securing the compound. In a few minutes, Barnes would be in federal custody, his network disrupted, his immediate plans destroyed. But Maya knew this wasn't really an ending. It was the beginning. Somewhere out there, other conspirators were planning other attacks. Other Brandon Walshes and Eric Barnes were recruiting insiders, stealing weapons, preparing to strike at the heart of American democracy. "Rodriguez, this is Agent Morrison," came through her earpiece. "Compounds are secure. Outstanding work." Maya keyed her radio. "Agent Morrison, we need to interrogate Barnes immediately. This network is larger than we thought, and there may be imminent attacks planned elsewhere." As FBI agents took Barnes into custody, Maya walked back toward the disabled trucks. Thompson was documenting the explosive materials while Martinez worked to make them safe for transport. The immediate crisis was over, but Maya's real work was just beginning. Her radio crackled with a familiar voice. "Maya, this is Colonel Webb. From Nellis. I've got the Pentagon on the line. They want to know if you're interested in a career change." Maya looked up at the Colorado stars, thinking about the events of the past 18 hours. This morning she'd been invisible, just another face in the crowd. Tonight she was standing in a terrorist compound, having helped prevent attacks that could have killed thousands of innocent people. "Colonel, what kind of career change are we talking about?" "The kind where you keep doing exactly what you've been doing today. The country needs people who can think outside the box, act under pressure, and see threats others miss." "Interested?" Maya smiled for the first time in hours. "Yes, sir. I'm very interested." As the FBI team secured the compound and prepared to transport the prisoners, Maya realized her transformation was complete. She was no longer Maya Rodriguez, the invisible fuel attendant. She was Maya Rodriguez, counterterrorism specialist, fighter pilot, and guardian of the Guardians. The fuel attendant who'd stolen a fighter jet to save a squadron had become exactly what her country needed: someone willing to stand between innocent people and those who would harm them. And she was just getting started. 6 months later, Maya Rodriguez stood in the briefing room of a nondescript building in Quantico, Virginia, studying satellite imagery of what appeared to be an abandoned warehouse in Detroit. The facility looked innocuous enough from above, but intelligence reports suggested it was another node in the network she'd been hunting since that morning at Nellis Air Force Base. "Target analysis confirms our suspicions," said Agent Sarah Chun, no relation to Captain Jessica Chun from the F-16 Squadron Maya had saved. "Unusual power consumption, suspicious vehicle traffic, and chemical deliveries that don't match any legitimate industrial use." Maya adjusted her position at the conference table, still getting used to the weight of her new role. The Department of Homeland Security had created a special task force specifically for her, officially called the Critical Infrastructure Protection Unit, but everyone just called it Maya's team. How many personnel are we looking at? Maya asked, studying the thermal imaging data. Conservative estimate, 8 to 12 individuals. But Maya, there's something else. We intercepted communications suggesting they've moved beyond fuel theft. They're manufacturing their own explosives now. Maya felt the familiar chill of recognition. The network had evolved, adapted to the security measures put in place after the Colorado operation. Instead of stealing military fuel, they were creating custom explosive compounds in hidden laboratories. What's the target? Agent Chun pulled up a calendar on her tablet. Democratic National Committee headquarters in Washington. DC intelligence suggests they're planning to strike during the winter session when all the major party leaders will be present. Maya leaned back in her chair, processing the implications. The scope had escalated again, from military bases to governors to the heart of American political leadership. Each operation had been more ambitious than the last. Timeline? Best estimate, 72 hours, maybe less. Maya looked around the conference table at her team. Thompson was there, having transferred from Air Force maintenance to become her technical specialist. Martinez had joined the FBI's bomb disposal unit. Agent Morrison had become their liaison with federal law enforcement. They'd worked together on 4 major operations in 6 months, dismantling cells from California to Florida. But this felt different, more personal. There's something else, Agent Chun continued. We think Barnes is coordinating this operation from a federal prison. He's been using coded messages in his legal correspondence to communicate with the network. Maya wasn't surprised. During his interrogation, Barnes had made it clear he viewed his arrest as a temporary setback, not a defeat. He'd been planning for this moment since the day they'd captured him in Colorado. Show me the prison communications. Agent Chun displayed several documents on the main screen. To casual observers, they looked like routine legal filings. But when Maya studied the language patterns, she could see the hidden messages embedded in seemingly innocent phrases. He's not just coordinating the Washington attack, Maya realized. He's activating the entire network. Look at these references to winter preparations and seasonal adjustments. He's telling every cell to execute their contingency plans simultaneously. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. They weren't dealing with a single terrorist attack, they were facing a coordinated assault on American infrastructure and leadership across multiple states. Maya stood up, pacing to the window that overlooked the Quantico training facilities. 6 months ago, she'd been pumping fuel into fighter jets, invisible to everyone around her. Now she was responsible for preventing what could be the largest domestic terrorism operation in American history. Agent Chun, I need real-time intelligence on every known cell location. Thompson, start analyzing power grid vulnerabilities. If they're planning coordinated attacks, they might try to cause blackouts. Martinez, contact every major city's bomb disposal unit. They need to be ready. Maya, Agent Morrison interrupted. What about the Washington target? We can't protect everything simultaneously. Maya turned back to the group, her mind already working through tactical options. We're not going to protect everything. We're going to eliminate the threat at its source. She walked to the wall map of the United States, marked with pins indicating known and suspected terrorist cells. The pattern was clear once you knew how to look for it, a network designed to cause maximum chaos through simultaneous attacks on critical infrastructure. Barnes made one mistake. He assumed we'd try to defend against his attacks. Instead, we're going to attack him. Maya outlined her plan. Instead of waiting for the terrorists to strike, they would conduct simultaneous raids on every known cell location. The timing would be critical, hit them all within the same hour to prevent any group from warning the others. That's ambitious, Thompson said. We're talking about coordinating operations across 8 states with dozens of federal, state, and local agencies. It's also our only chance, Maya replied. If we let them execute this plan, the casualties could number in the thousands. We stop them now, or we spend the next decade hunting survivors through the wreckage they leave behind. Agent Morrison was already on her phone, coordinating with FBI field offices across the country. Maya could hear the controlled urgency in her voice as she explained the situation to regional commanders. Maya, there's one more problem, Agent Chun said quietly. The Detroit cell isn't just manufacturing explosives. Intelligence suggests they're also developing dispersal systems, ways to spread chemical agents through ventilation systems. Maya felt her blood run cold. Chemical weapons changed everything. A conventional explosive attack might kill dozens or hundreds of people. Chemical agents deployed in the right location could kill thousands. What kind of chemicals? We're not sure. But the purchasing pattern suggests nerve agents or respiratory toxins. Something designed for maximum casualties in enclosed spaces. Maya looked at the satellite image of the Detroit warehouse again. What had seemed like just another terrorist cell was actually a weapons laboratory preparing for mass murder. Change of plans, Maya announced. The Detroit cell becomes our primary target. We hit them first, secure the chemical weapons, then proceed with the other raids. Maya, that violates every principle of coordinated operations, Agent Morrison protested. If we tip our hand early, the other cells will disappear. And if we let them deploy chemical weapons, the other cells won't matter because we'll be dealing with a national emergency that makes 9/11s look like a warm-up act. Maya was already putting on her tactical gear, the same equipment she'd worn during the Colorado raid, but this time felt different. This time, she wasn't improvising. She was leading a professional operation with trained specialists and proper support. Thompson, I want you coordinating technical support from here. Monitor all communications. Watch for any sign the network is accelerating their timeline. Maya, I should be going with you. Maya shook her head. I need you here. If this goes wrong, you're the only one who understands their operational patterns well enough to track down the survivors. As Maya's team prepared for deployment, Agent Chun pulled her aside. Maya, there's something else you should know. We've identified the financial backing for this network. It's not just domestic terrorism, there's foreign money involved. Lot of it. How much money? Enough to fund operations like this for years. This isn't the end of the network, Maya. It's just the beginning of a much larger conflict. Maya absorbed this information, adding it to the growing list of threats she'd need to address. But that was a problem for tomorrow. Today, she had chemical weapons to secure and terrorists to stop. Agent Chun, after we shut down this operation, I want a full financial analysis. Follow the money back to its source. If foreign actors are funding domestic terrorism, that changes the entire scope of this investigation. The helicopter ride to Detroit gave Maya time to reflect on the journey that had brought her to this moment. 6 months ago, she'd been a nobody, overlooked and underestimated. Now she was leading a counter-terrorism unit that had prevented attacks across the continental United States, but she'd also learned something important about visibility. Being noticed wasn't always an advantage. Sometimes the most effective guardian was the one nobody saw coming. As the helicopter descended toward the landing zone near Detroit, Maya checked her equipment one last time. The warehouse was waiting, filled with unknown dangers and chemical weapons that could kill thousands. But Maya Rodriguez was no longer the uncertain fuel attendant who'd stolen a fighter jet to save her colleagues. She was a professional surrounded by experts, backed by the full resources of the federal government. More importantly, she'd learned that courage wasn't about being fearless. It was about being afraid and doing the right thing anyway. 2 minutes out, called the pilot. Maya keyed her radio. All teams, this is Rodriguez. Today we finish what we started 6 months ago. Let's bring these people home. The warehouse district of Detroit spread out below them, gray and industrial under the winter sky. Somewhere in that maze of buildings, terrorists were preparing to commit mass murder. But they'd made one critical mistake. They'd underestimated the fuel attendant who refused to stay invisible. Maya Rodriguez was coming for them, and she was bringing everything she'd learned along the way. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hits the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.